Hello, welcome back to part 2 of our training video series on how to use KYHMIS. So you see I'm back in the training site again. I've already got, I'm shadowing a user, the same user that we referred to last time. So as I mentioned before, the very first thing I need to do is set my Enter Data As selection. So I'm going to click on Enter Data As, and I'm going to select the dummy project so that I can associate all of this new client's information with the dummy project. So I'll hit the green plus sign to select the provider. I'm not going to set the backdate yet. More on that in a minute. So I'm going to click on ClientPoint. So the first thing that I'm going to go over is how to search for existing clients, how to check for duplicates. We're also going to talk about how to edit existing client records and how to get a new client set up into a household. So once I click on ClientPoint, you'll see the client search screen. And it does say at the top, please search the system before adding a new client. So this is for a couple of reasons. For one, it's to make sure that you can find the correct client. But two, also to make sure that if you're adding a new one or checking to add a new one, that you look for duplicates to make sure you're not adding any clients in that are already in the system. This is really important because we can't actually really delete clients from the system. We can only either make them inactive or we can merge them into an existing record. So we always want to check for duplicates. So first, I'm going to search for a client that already exists. Let's say I've got an update for them and I just want to add this update in. So since this is the training site and we're always adding fake clients into the system, I'm going to search for Bunny because I know there's a Bugs Bunny or something like that in here. So I'm typing the last name Bunny in and I'm going to hit search. So you'll see some clients come up with the last name Bunny. Now all of this is fake information, obviously, these are not real people. You'll see this icon here, okay, beside some of these names. Now what this means is that these clients were created by the provider that I have selected as my Enter Data As option. So that can quickly indicate if this is the client that you're looking for. So I'm going to click on Bugs here. This is how you get to get into the system and edit a client that already exists. I can click on his name or I can click the pencil, which as you recall from the last video means edit. So I'm just going to click on his name, doesn't really matter. And the first thing that comes up is Backdate. It checks to see if you want to use a backdate. For now I'm not going to, just because I'm just going over how you would go in and actually make changes to him. Now this is the layout of the client system within ClientPoint. So we have these tabs set up from left to right: summary, client profile, households, ROI, etc. And then service transactions at the top, which has some other options within it related to services. Now I can go in and make any changes to this client's information. So this is how you go in and find a client that already exists in the system and make changes to their information. Now you'll see I'm going to click on Home and go back to my dashboard, and if I bring down the last viewed tab, you'll see his name populates. So if I have to go back to his record, I don't have to search for him again. I can just click right here and go straight into his record. It's very handy. But I'm going to go back to ClientPoint. Now let's say I want to add a new person. Okay, so I'm going to make up a client name. I always like to use cartoon characters, movie characters, etc. Just any fake names you can come up with. I'm just going to make Inspector Gadget. So I'm going to add his first and last name in here. Name data quality refers to how accurate was the name that they gave you. What's the nature of the name that they gave you? Did they give you their full name, a partial name, a street name, or code name, etc. And then you have these other options: client doesn't know, client refused, and data not collected. You really want to avoid these answers as much as possible, these three, because HUD doesn't really like to see those. They have a tendency to think, well, if you can ask a question, you should be getting an answer for it. You should try to collect as much information as you can about the client. I'm going to say full name reported here. You can also put an alias in. I'm going to make up a social really quick. Social security number data quality refers to the same kind of thing as name data quality. How accurate was the number they gave you? Did they give you their full social, approximate, partial, maybe the last 4 digits only, something like that. I'm going to click full social reported. Are they a U.S. military veteran? Yes, no, and then the same 3 responses that we had before. I'm going to say no. This exact match box here just means that if I click this, it's going to look for this information exactly, nothing else. Whereas if it's not checked, it may pull up clients who have the last name Gadget, or part of this social or something like that. So I will hit search, and this is always important because when you search, you want to look in the results section down here and make sure there's no duplicates. Make sure there may already be an Inspector Gadget in the system with this same social. If that's the case, you don't want to add this client again. You want to just go into that record and make changes to that client record. Okay, now in this case, I don't have any matches, and I know this information to be correct. Maybe he's just come into my agency and I want to get him set up in the system. So all I will do is hit add new client with this information. Now here it's going to ask me to backdate. So let's just say I want to backdate to, see if you see this pop up, that means that you're changing the month first. Okay, now I put in 12. Okay, so December, but it still has this year set as 2015, and December 2015 is in the future. It hasn't happened yet. So you'll get this pop-up that says it can't be selected. So I always recommend changing the year first. I'm going to change this to 2012. I'm going to change it to 12/1/2012. I will hit set new backdate. And then this comes up. It basically just refers to how do you want to add this client into the system. If it's just the client themselves, they don't have a family coming in with them or anything like that, you can just select Add Client Only. Because when it comes to using ServicePoint, if it's more than just one client, then you have to build a household for them. But if it's a client by themselves, they don't have any other members with them, you don't need to make a household. You can just add them in by themselves. So for this example, I'll just hit Add Client Only. I don't have to build a household for him. And you'll see I've got Inspector Gadget here into the system. You'll see everything is yellow. Remember, that indicates that we're in backdate mode. And then I can go in and start setting up information for him. Okay? Now, let's say I'm going to make a new client. Let's say with this new client, I want to actually put them into a household. Okay? So I'm going to do, I'm going to say Fred Flintstone. I'll answer the questions again. Full name reported. Social. Full social reported, not a veteran. And I'm going to search. Now you'll see there's already 2 Fred Flintstones in here. So this is an example of where I need to check for duplicates and make sure it's not the same client. So for example, I see here that my client, this new one, his last 4 digits of his social are 3232. So these socials don't match. So this being the case and my client coming in and he's giving me the correct information, I know that these 2 records aren't the one I'm looking for. So I need to add him into the system. Otherwise, I would just click this name and go in and make my changes there. So I'll hit Add New Client with this information. I'm going to keep my backdate the same, 12/1/2012. Set New Backdate. So now we're going to establish a household this time. So Fred and Wilma are going to come in. We're going to assume at the moment that they don't have any children with them. So here I'm going to select Add Client and Add New Household. Okay, now what this does is it allows me to immediately start building my household. So Fred is in the system now. I've already got him established by clicking that Add New User with, or Add New Client with this information button. So now I need to actually set up the other members in his household. Well, the first thing I need to do is establish what type of household it is. So if I bring down this drop down, you'll see this just refers to a description of the household. So as I said, we're going to assume that right now they don't have any children. So I'm just going to say a couple with no children here. Now we have another search box. So in this case, I'm going to search for any other clients that are in the household. So I'll search for Wilma. Full name reported. Make up a social, full social reported, not a veteran. And then I'll hit search. So you'll see there are Again, a couple of records already in here for Wilma Flintstone. I'll check my last 4 digits of my social, 9828. These are not matches here. So I'll click Add New Client with this information. This warning box comes up really just to warn you to make sure you're checking for duplicates all the time whenever you search. I'll hit OK, and you'll see it pops Wilma down here, and she's got this red minus sign beside her name. This refers to, maybe I made a mistake, accidentally added the wrong person. I can hit remove and take her out. Okay, and then just have Fred and search for the correct record again. But in this case, I know that these two are correct, so I will hit continue, and this is going to build up my household, Fred and Wilma. Now on this screen, all we have to do here, we can change the type if we need to at any time. And then here I need to establish who the head of household is and what the relationship of any other household members are to that head of household. So here in my head of household column, I've got a yes or no drop down box for both members, and I've also got this relationship to head of household column with drop down boxes for those as well. So I'm going to set Fred to my head of household. So I'll set yes for his head of household column, and it populates his relationship to head of household to self. Now for Wilma, I'm going to say no, she's not the head of household. We've already established Fred is. So her relationship to Fred, I'll say is, she is his wife. You'll see my joined household date automatically populates, and you'll notice it goes off of what we have our backdate set to, 12/1/2012. This is all we need to do here. We don't need to do anything else below this. So I can just hit save and exit. So the difference between these options, save, if I hit save, then it'll save the changes I've made, but it'll keep me on this window in case I need to do anything else. Save and exit will save my changes, but will close out of the window, and exit will just close out of the window without saving anything unless I've already hit save. So I'll hit save and exit now. And you see we're looking at Fred's record. Now, most of the time when you're doing anything with client information in ServicePoint, you're going to want to be on the head of household's record. Not all of the time. Sometimes you may want to edit something specifically for a different member. But in this case, and in most cases, we're going to be looking at the head of household. If I needed to change to Wilma to add in some information for her that doesn't apply to Fred, I can use this switch to another household member drop-down box here. So if I bring that down, I see Wilma, and it would show any clients that are a part of this household. So I can select Wilma, and you have to hit select for it to actually change. So I'll hit submit, and now you'll see I have Wilma's name up here. You'll see this number in parentheses beside their name. That is their client identification number. So let me show you how this works. So 286 is her number. So if I go to home, I've closed out of my record. I could use last viewed if I want to, but if I just need to search for them again, I can also go to ClientPoint, and you have this client number search box. So her number, as you see up here, was 286. So if I just type 286 and hit submit, it takes me directly into her record. Now, that's very handy. That way, if you have your client's ID number in front of you, this way you don't have to search through any other possible clients that exist in the system with the same name. You can just go directly into their record. So I'm back at Wilma again. Now, as I said before, I generally want to be on the head of household's record, so I'm going to switch back to Fred using the switch to another household member drop down. I'll click submit. Now I'm looking at Fred's record. Now this is the summary tab. So the summary tab isn't necessary to be used. Some people like to edit their client's information on the household or on the summary tab because it pulls a bunch of information from other tabs into the summary tab. I don't train this way though. There are a couple of reasons I don't train this way. For one, most people might not want to use it. But also two, there is a certain workflow that you need to follow when you're editing client information. That's why these tabs are set up this way. The workflow goes from left to right. So you want to make changes on client profile, for example, maybe before you go to households. you have to have a household member established under the Households tab before you can do an entry into the program for them. And you have to establish an ROI as well before you can do an entry. Things like that. It's set up in a certain workflow. Whereas on the Summary tab, it's not necessarily in that same workflow. Now if I go to the Client Profile tab, you'll see under Client Record here, these are the answers that we provided when searching for him. But if I needed to make any changes, so if, for example, I forgot to answer his U.S. military veteran question, I can just click this pencil and answer these questions here. Okay? I can also issue an ID card if I wanted to. And I could also select a photo from my computer to add for this client. So you just hit Change, click Choose File, and then you can browse your system for photos that you may want to add for the client. I'll just add a sample photo here of a koala. You can add a description if you want and hit Upload. So now you'll see my photo has populated here. I could clear it and change it again if I wanted to. Now, client demographics need to be answered. In fact, most of the questions on here HUD requires an answer to. There are very few that they don't, that you can actually skip over. And we'll go through those as we come across them. Now, client demographics, you can answer that in one of two different places. You can answer it here on the Client Profile tab, or you can answer it later when you're doing their entry into the program. I'll be covering that both ways throughout these videos. So for Fred here, I'm going to answer his here in the Client Profile tab. So to do that, I'll click the pencil by Client Demographics to edit these questions. And then I will just make up some information for him. I'll put in a date of birth type. This is similar to the data quality questions from the search window. Full date of birth reported, approximate or partial, etc. I'll say full. Gender, so Fred is a male. This is one of those questions you can skip because you only answer it if none of these apply. Primary race, Fred is white. Now, secondary race is also another one you can skip if they don't identify as biracial. So, for example, you don't want to do white and white. Okay? You would just say white for primary, leave secondary blank. Likewise, if it were someone that identified with multiple races, you would select both. Okay? I'm going to select white for primary and just leave secondary as select. Ethnicity refers to Hispanic or non-Hispanic. I'll say non-Hispanic for him. And then save. So you'll see the answers populate here, but also it calculates his age. So this is all we need to do on this screen. If we look below, we have a few other things that we can do. These are not things that are required by HUD to use in the system, but they're there if you ever want to. So I could add client notes here. So if I select Add New Client Note, I can associate a date with it. You'll see it populates automatically with whatever I'm backdated to. And then I could add in any notes I might want to add for him. And then if you click Save, it will save that note here. It will say what provider it was created under, the date, and a preview of the note. You can edit the note, you can delete the note, you can print it, or you can just view the full note. File attachments. Here I can attach different files, any kind of files that I might want to keep on his client record in ServicePoint just to keep them in one spot. I can do that. So I could browse and find any kind of documents I might have that I want to associate with him, and I can upload them here. And then incident, I can create a new incident report if he were to ever get in trouble. So I could add in an incident date. You know, I could select what type of incident. Maybe he got in trouble for alcohol or disrespectful behavior, violent behavior, etc. I can select whether or not he was banned and add any information that I need to add here. But remember, this is not required by HUD. It's just there if you ever want to use it. Now let's take a look at my Households tab. Now you'll note that I changed the client demographics for Fred, but I did not for Wilma. we'll change Wilma's on the entry when we go establish that. So let's move. We're going to follow that left to right workflow here, and we'll go to households next. So it's the next tab in order here. So you'll see my couple with no children household that we've established, and it consists of Fred and Wilma. You'll see some of their information here. And if I click on Manage Household, this is how I can actually make changes to the household. You'll see this just takes us back to the screen we were on earlier, where we decided who the head of household was and where we set the relationship to the head of household elsewhere, as well as change household type. But I don't need to make any changes here, so I will hit Exit. You can also check to see if they were a member of a previous household in the past by clicking this arrow. And you'll see if I hover over it, it says Expand Previous Households panel. So he is not a previous member of any households. I could start a new household if I wanted to. You don't generally want to do that unless the circumstance actually requires it. So we have them both established in a household. In the next video, we'll move on to talking about the Release of Information tab, as well as how to do service transactions. So thank you for viewing this second video. I hope you found it helpful.